Suicide Zen Forgiveness. Shattering the stigma, igniting hope. I'm Elaine Lindsay, and my mission is to end the silence, the stigma, and the shame surrounding suicide, ideation, and mental health. We talk about the hard stuff, because asking for help should be as easy as ordering a coffee. Here, we share real stories from those who've lost someone, survived an attempt, live with ideation, or battle mental health challenges. Why? Because sharing your burden can lighten the load. Please note, Suicide Zen Forgiveness, the podcast, is for education only. Some of the subject matter could be triggering for those who are either grieving or having mental health problems. If you're in North America, you can text 988 for immediate support. And if you're elsewhere, please reach out to your local suicide hotline for mental health service. You matter. My aim is to normalize the conversation so you feel safe enough to speak up and ask for help. So now, let's start the show. Hi there, it's good to be back. And today I'm bringing you a new guest. His name is Andy Campbell. And I will tell you, he sounds super interesting because we were having a discussion about hockey before we started. So without further ado, I'm just going to bring him up and we'll get into his story. Hi there.
Hello, Nita. How are you today?
I'm great, and I thank you so much for joining me. And like I said, we will continue to talk about hockey sometime later. It's one of my favorite sports.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you coming. I really appreciate you coming. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Andy Campbell? What is it that you do? And we'll get into your story right after that.
Yeah, I won't spend time on that, but I've been through a number of significant setbacks in my life. I guess what today therapists would call traumas, or at least that's what they told me when I went to therapy. They were like, "You've experienced a lot of traumas," and I was like, "I thought it was just life," but it turns out these things happened. I thought the worst of those would be when I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer about 6.5 years ago. They gave the prognosis then was about 6 months, but I'm coming up on 7 years, so I'm still here. But that was not the worst. The worst was the day I found my son Heston, who was 18, who had killed himself in his room, and I found him. That was the worst day. And I have learned from those two experiences to never say things can't get worse, because they can. And so I don't say that things can't get worse after my son, or my wife and my son. When I say my, I mean ours. So if I slip into my, consider that means my wife and I. I don't know what worse would be, but I don't want to find out. So I'm not going to tempt fate by saying it can't get worse. I would just say I do not want to experience anything worse.
Absolutely. I can only say I feel your pain. I don't have any adequate words to offer for your grief other than my heart will sit with yours, because it is not something we ever want to live through, is the loss of a child.
That's such a great response, because I think that's how you know someone has been through it. Everyone else will give you advice, and they mean it with the best of intentions. They really do. They want to help. They don't know what to say. Who does know what to say? But advice doesn't really help. There is no cliche that's going to heal this wound. The only thing you can say is what you just said. And I appreciate that.
Thank you. And Heston, you said, was 18.
Yeah, he told us first. We were walking out of a restaurant. My wife and I have 4 children, and so he had called her off to the side, and they had walked over to sit on the street curb. It was summer, and he wanted to talk to her, so I took the other 3 children and put them in the car, and I waited. And after a few minutes, I looked over and I could see there was some level of distress on her face, but not the world ended, but something wasn't right. And she came back to the car and said, and I said, "Well, what's wrong?" And she said, "We'll talk about it when we get home." And when we got home, she told me that our 9-year-old son had decided that he did not see a purpose for living. He did not know why he had to be here, and that he was going to kill himself.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he was 9. And he had not been exposed to the internet, didn't have any friends or family that had ever committed suicide. To our knowledge, was not in any way influenced by some external force. He just decided. Now, later on, and after his death, people would say, I think he was born with a personality disorder, or he had some of this, that, and the other. None of that really helps, because it doesn't matter. What mattered was that kicked off a 9-year struggle. Just, I guess the way I would say it visually is my wife and I would each hold on to one ankle trying to keep him in this world. And we had very open discussions, never shied away from it. It was always there. We knew it was there. He was one of those, he was a very old soul, but a very tender soul, too tender for this world. His heart was too soft for this world. He felt everything, and it was black or white. There wasn't a lot of gray. So it was either positive or negative. And what he saw was really positive, and you didn't expect. He was highly intelligent, had a high IQ. And so to him, all of this was logical, almost Spock from Star Trek, almost Spock. I would ask him sometimes when we would talk about it. Sometimes there'd be arguments about it, because it would be, you get passionate about trying to keep your child to reason that they're important, that they're unique, that they're here for a purpose. God created them. You may not see it right now, but there's reasons to be here. Okay. None of us know at 14 or 15 why we're here. Okay. That's an oddity. Like, you got to give it time. But he was extremely logical. And so he said, I know how it's going to play out, and I'm not going to be here because there's no reason to be here. He loved languages and philosophy. By the time he was 18, he could write and speak Latin. He consumed philosophy, whether it was from the Bible, Marcus Aurelius's diaries, the Greek philosophers, or whether it was, he knew all of Plato's works. He read Socrates. He knew all these. But he also, and I highly recommend to any of your listeners, if you have someone who's having suicidal ideation, or you yourself are having suicidal ideations, do not read Nietzsche, and do not read Aurelius's diaries. Nietzsche was not a stable human being when he wrote. He had a lot of challenges people don't realize. Like, they talk about him like it. And Marcus Aurelius, as I was speaking to another person about this, and she said it was a diary. It really wasn't meant to be published. It was just his thoughts. Okay. Yeah. And I don't think I'd want my thoughts, and I certainly wouldn't want someone acting on my thoughts, okay, that I put in my diary. So I would say, if you're having suicidal ideations, do not read Nietzsche or Marcus Aurelius. Look for Carl Jung, or look at Dostoevsky. He's got some great works about coming from dark to light. And I think I'm probably rambling now, but I'll stop there.
No, I think that's wonderful. And that is such an important thing to put out there. Because as much as when we're young, we want to take in all this and learn all the things we can. If you have suicidal ideation, we have that need to have confirmation. And sadly, the universe will give you confirmation, whether what you're asking is good, bad, or indifferent. That confirmation bias will always be shown to you. And that it's got to be terrifying for a parent.
Well,
have a young child that smart.
My doctor said this, and I do not take offense that has a family member that has Down syndrome. Okay. But my doctor said, it's the highly intelligent that are always at risk. It's those, because they can see all the negatives. And he said, you know who I never have to worry about having that commits suicide, broadly speaking? He goes, I never have to worry about people with Down syndrome. He goes, they just don't. He goes, and he kind of said, maybe that's what we lost at the Garden of Eden. Maybe we lost the happiness chromosome. And so now we're here. And so I just think if you read Marcus Aurelius, and he's talking about an honorable death, and he's talking about do not be fearful of death, and you're in a good mental place, or like I was dealing with cancer, and I was reminded that it's on my website. I wrote it that I am not afraid of death. I am afraid of a painful death. I don't want to die with pancreatic cancer.
No.
But I'm not afraid of death. And I think that's what Marcus Aurelius was working to communicate from a Stoic belief, right? Is face your life, but if you're in a bad place, an honorable death, and death don't be afraid of death, takes on a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think if someone's I've only had a suicidal ideation one time, and so I did not have it to the depth nor the breadth of time that people deal with these things. So I do not attempt to speak as an expert from that point of view. My only expertise is finding my son and living with the consequences and the impact of the family. But I would simply offer to those who are struggling with this, do not read things that tell you that life may not be worth living or there may not be meaning to life, because there is. And right now you may not be in a place to sort out the reality of Nietzsche's life and where he was at and what he was suffering through and why he did. That's not going to resonate with you. So do your best to take in things that will reaffirm for you that life is worthwhile, that there is meaning to life. And if you want to read something, read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
But read that. If you can get through the first half and you get to the second half, that's probably it was probably one of the singular most impactful books that I had read. It's short, it's sweet, it's 2 parts, but man, the story of just your life can have meaning. I would give that book to anybody dealing with suicidality. What's that?
And it's up to you to choose.
Yes, he makes that point. And yeah, it talks about the people that made it and didn't make it, and the ones that didn't make it, but they still had meaning. And I don't know, it was just, I just thought Frankl was, if I had to give somebody one book to read, it is Man's Search for Meaning.
It's right on my bookcase.
Right there. You can't see it, but it's back there beside the bear. It's a
absolutely seminal book. It is so bang on. For me, I think part of it is not just happiness, it's hope.
Yes.
That's what I think that's what we need to instill in others. What we need to bring to the table when people are struggling is a little hope.
I think that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. And that is what I hope conversations like this do, is for someone who's right on the edge, there, whatever thing you think about it, the way you put it into words, but whether you're looking over the edge into the abyss or whether you're standing at the edge of the dark tunnel, and either one can have a seductive allure that makes you think this will make it all better. It will. You just need to have a little bit of hope for one more day, and then let tomorrow bring you a little bit more hope. Don't go into the tunnel. Don't step off that cliff into the abyss. It doesn't actually get better. Okay. I don't know if this will ever really reach someone. So I would just hope that God will move the universe so that my poor phrasing will translate in someone's brain the intent behind it. Okay. Which is, if you're thinking about suicide, do not make the mistake that because you leave, the pain leaves this planet. It doesn't. The pain remains. You got names of people up there that you've lost. The pain remains. and it expands. And I think there is a choice there that no matter how dark it is, if you can find a way to make a choice. I learned from my mother how to live through her battle with cancer. It took her 11 years to pass away from it, but she taught me how to live and how she fought to stay alive and then ultimately passed away. And when my cancer came around, people say, "How did you?" And I'm like, first of all, if I decided to quit, I'm not going to the afterlife and having her slap me around. I'm avoiding that. So I don't need that kind of pressure when I take my last breath. But I had an example, and that example of perseverance and persistence then passed on to my generation, and now I've passed it on to the next generation. Suicide has that same impact. Those actions will be passed on generationally. That pain will go. So in my humble opinion, the best outcome for everyone, including that person, even though they may think everybody will be better off without them, they will not be. It will be worse.
No.
What's better is if they stay and work to find a way to minimize that pain, reduce that pain, and then use themselves as a generational example of perseverance and fighting against the dark.
Yeah. And perhaps helping someone else, because I firmly believe that suicide is a way too permanent solution to a very temporary problem.
I used to tell Heston, never make an irreversible choice when the problem you're facing will not last. Okay. Like it is exactly what you just said. It's not a permanent problem. It may feel like it right now, but it's not. The same thing applies to those of us who've lost a child to suicide or lost a friend to suicide. The act and the pain is permanent, but life has a way of, if you let the flow carry you, it will carry you forward. You don't leave anything behind. You're not going to forget them, but you can make a choice to not stay there, to let your life progress.
Some of us just take longer to get there.
Yes, and that's okay. The main thing is that it's one of my core beliefs is always fall forward. And if you're going to fall, you're going to get knocked down. You're going to get punched so hard that there's no way you can stand. You've had the breath knocked out of you. You're in pain. But mentally, I've worked to remind myself, turn your mind forward. Look forward. You may not be able to move forward. You may be in shock. You may be in pain. You may just be unable to move forward right now. But at least face forward to where you want to go. Then at least in the direction that you want. Aim. And every little step, I described it to somebody that after Heston, I had been knocked backwards. And so I didn't know what to do. So metaphorically speaking, I had rolled over and I was now prone on my abdomen, but I was facing forward. I at least got my head forward. I knew I wanted to get to a place where it wasn't here. And then at first I couldn't move, but at least my mind was turned forward. And then I could use my fingers to claw my way forward. And maybe I just moved 1/10 of a millimeter. I just barely at all. But then I would start pushing with my toes and I would maybe move a millimeter the next day or the next week. And then the next time I moved, it might be 2 millimeters. And that's some days that's absolutely good enough. That's big work to get that far.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And for your other kids, they're all older than Heston?
His brother was 16 months older, and the two girls they're spaced 2 years, but it was all 2 years apart, and then Heston was 16 months between his brother and he. So, yeah, devastating to them. Then you got to worry because Heston's suicide could have easily led to more death. I mean, it's once the door is open, it's not like it just pulls you through, it pulls
No,
other
no.
people through. And because now they see that, and I think that's one of the problems we have with, young people committing suicide today is that it's like the door gets open and then people start thinking that's a viable path. And so my wife struggled. I thought I was going to lose her to
Yeah,
suicide. She was very close to my son. He was the youngest one, so she got to spend more time with him. And
yeah,
they had a pact that he would never do this unless he came to talk to her, so she would have an opportunity to work him through it. That it was just, I thought I was going to lose her. Actually, there was one day where I really think, and she would say we came very close to her entering that tunnel as well. But she was able to get some help. Our private physician was always on standby. And he told us, he said, I've lost one. I'm not losing another one. So we had a cell phone. It's off, but yeah, my daughter's, I think everybody still, you'd say it's been this June 7th will be 4 years. That's nothing.
that's nothing.
That's nothing. So yeah, the siblings they all have to deal with it in the same way.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter, in her job, she has a lot of friends that are obviously her age now, in the mid-20s, and she, they've had mental struggles, and so it all comes back to her whenever they have mental struggles, and
Oh,
her answer to it, more likely than not, is probably being angry at them for even thinking about it and putting her through. It's like, my oldest daughter is a doctor. She's become a doctor, and when she has had to do her rounds through the psych ward, and she has patients that come to her and tell her that they have suicidal ideation, it brings all of it back. So I think it's, my son writes about it. He's I guess you'd say, like a internet influencer. He does travels and does
ah,
travel guides and stuff, but he writes about it often. It still is with him every day. And yeah, it, as bad as it was before, no one wanted this. No one
no.
would want this. Right.
Oh my God, no, no. I asked about the children because you seem so very open, and I really believe that talking about those that we lose is so critically important, and sharing the stories and keeping their memory alive with everyone in the family. For me, it's no different. How someone died does not affect whether we should maintain their memory, whether we should say their name. I have grandchildren that my grandmother, they know her. They could probably draw you a picture because we talk about everyone we've lost as much as we talk about everybody else. And there are sad memories, there are annoying memories, there are funny memories of everyone that I've lost, because we're not one-dimensional beings. We never have been. And keeping them alive, to me, that's super important, because as much as North America is built on the nuclear family, like we used to be a much larger tribe in families.
Yes. Yeah.
I came to this country with my mother, my father, my grandmother, and my aunt, because that's what was important to the family, was the members.
Yeah.
We didn't bring furniture. My father paid for them to come rather than our furniture, because that was much more important. And it's wonderful to be able to grow up with a grandmother and an aunt in and around you, or other pieces of your family, aunts, uncles, what have you. And I think it makes the job easier for parents too, when you have others. And I think you see that with a lot of immigrants, because other cultures have maintained that larger family unit.
Oh, I don't know that I could agree more with you. The my mother had passed away. My father was estranged. My wife's parents had both passed away. Neither really knew our children. None of them had the opportunity to really know our children, except maybe my father for a short period of time. there were no aunts, uncles, cousins. So I think that in today's society, if what you're saying is, and I think it is, and I agree with you, the lack of a larger family community, because then there's always somebody who understands that person. It's
Yeah.
large enough to have somebody who understands. If my mother had been here, I really don't think I don't think Heston would have killed himself,
Yeah.
because there was just, my wife and I have talked about how she would have just had a way to communicate with him. She would have just had a way. She was tough as nails,
Yeah.
but she would have had a special affection for him. Like, there was just something about it, and I knew that. But without her here, then it's left up to those of us who aren't like her and could never really have that. And so I do think we've talked about that many times, how, you know, now there's always negatives to large families, and bad things can happen. And I get
Yeah.
all those things, but just generally speaking, when the family community is larger, I think there are more people. One, there's more people to look out for people. There's more people who notice something's not exactly right, that maybe a parent or a brother or sister didn't notice because you're around it so much. It's kind of
Yeah.
like when you review a paper that you've written and you can't see the typographical. I've read
Yeah.
it 3 times. I don't see anything. And then somebody like you, do you not know English? Because it's complete. So, but I've stared at it, and so I just think there's a lot to that kind of that extended family community that helps hold things together, and we definitely miss that.
Yeah. And it's even passing on those memories and the stories of all the others in the family, because a child may see themselves in one of the elders you talk about that isn't there. They may have a memory connection with that person because of what they've learned.
Yeah, 100%. 100, yes. Yeah, it's important. Again, for any of your listeners who are having suicide ideations, that is not a prerequisite to giving up hope. Do not
No.
give up hope. And I've been told that people, basically, the more light you try to shine on someone who's in that dark place, the more resistant they become. I don't know how someone finds their way out of it, but all I know to say is that you'll be gone and the pain will remain. It doesn't go with you. The pain is here in this dimension, in these 4 dimensions
Yeah.
on this planet. That's where the pain resides.
Yeah.
And so it's just going to stay, and it's just going to affect generations of people. So I would hope that someone would take that into consideration and maybe turn their focus, what little bit of energy they may be able to get, they would turn their focus to staying and solving the pain.
And one of the things that many people have found useful is just offering to listen. My hashtag is step up to listen. People don't necessarily want you to solve their problem. They're not looking for an answer. They just need someone to listen, to validate that they've been heard. And it can be very uncomfortable to be the listener, but that can be the very best thing you can do for someone. And in that listening, they can find that little drop of hope. And maybe tomorrow a little more and a little more.
Yeah, I think you speak very wisely, because and it's not just in this, but in any number of things. And I'm guilty of this, right? Like, you see a problem. It's like my wife, she said, I just wanted you to listen to it. And I'm like, hey, I'm here to solve problems. Okay, so let's check this one off the list and move to the next problem. But for some of these things, there is no solution to the problem, right? You're not going to say anything that's going to make it better. You're not going to, whatever solution you find is going to be discounted. Even if it was a good one, it's still going to be discounted if you suggested it. And so there's just, I think your words are wise, that pretty much listening and just sitting there with them is about all you can do.
Because they've proven that if you think someone is suicidal, and you ask them if they are, that is not going to push them into suicide. It's actually going to be helpful. And that's one of the most important things I always want people to take away is if you're worried about someone, if someone has backed off a bit or just doesn't seem like they normally are, then ask, what's going on? I'm happy to listen. And then do that. Just listen.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, sage advice. If I think we had I relate this some to, we spoke about man's search for meaning. In the camps, they were like, as I remember it, don't hold it against me if I get this wrong, but as I remember it, there were like 3 types of people. There were those who had no meaning, and they would find an earlier end in whatever form that was. Then there were those who did have meaning, but they would still end up in the chambers, but they died with meaning. And then there were those, I think he said like 1 in 28 that made it out of the camps alive. And that, but to be one of the 28, you had to have meaning. Like you had to be in the meaning category to make it out. And I think when you speak about asking and listening, I think about, like with Heston, I think our experience fell in that middle category. We asked and listened and worked to help him find meaning, but we weren't successful. What I didn't want to be was the person who didn't have that conversation.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be the one who never brought it up, avoided it, pretended like it didn't exist. So we had a lot of direct conversations, and it doesn't mean you're going to save them, but I think no matter what their decision is, it will at least leave you with knowing that you had the conversations with them. And then hopefully your child will be, or your friend or your spouse, your family member will be the 1 in 28 that makes it out.
Yeah. And this is, not much comfort. Heston approached your wife when he was 9. And through what you did with him, you both kept him for another 9 years.
Yeah.
That's saying something.
When these things happen, and again, I'm not smiling or laughing out of it being humorous. It's just a reaction to just how there are days I still can't believe this is, I still start like, this can't be like, and then I realize it is, but there's still days 4 years in where I'm still, oh, this can't be real. Wow, that was a bad dream. What happened? It seems so real. And then it turns out it was real. I'm sorry. Can you remind me the last thing? My mind wandered. I'm sorry. It just wandered to Heston for a moment.
That's okay. It's about giving him those extra 9 years.
Oh, yeah. You look for something to give you some level of, it's not really peace. It's some level of comfort, but it's not really, I don't know. I can't really find the word for it, but it's something where you say, like we would say, in the end, it was futile. But I don't know if we could have survived if he had killed himself at 12 or 11 or even 16 or something. But like we got him to 18.
Yes.
There came a day when he had to stand on his own and make a decision. In my opinion, he chose poorly, but we got him to what is generally accepted as adulthood. Okay. And so at that point, I don't like the outcome at all. If I could get my hands on him, I would explain to him in no uncertain terms that was not a good decision. Having said that, in a sense, we got him across the finish line.
Yeah.
We got him across at least that way. He made it a finish line, but at least we got him across through that gate. And you just take I had a therapist tell me one time, I don't know, maybe this will be helpful for your listeners. It was certainly helpful for me. I was having a really tough time. I was crying like a baby. I was upset. I was telling her about the things that I had come to believe that if I had done them, he would still be here. And she said, "Why is that?" And I said, "Because if I had done this, then this would happen, and then this thing would happen, and then that would not have happened, right? I would have done this, then he would have done that, then I would have done this, then he would have had the whole thing planned like later." And she said, and I'm paraphrasing, okay, I never say it the same way twice, but the general theme was, so basically, there are no other options, no other variables that could have happened. It would have only worked out for the best. It would have worked out for your perceived best.
Yeah.
And I said, that's how it would have worked. Like this, I know what would have. And she goes, "No, see, you're assuming that, and you've let no other potential outcome in the entire universe, but you've narrowed it down so tightly to make out a way." And then I had done what Heston did. He had looked at the world and narrowed down, he had ruled out every potential thing
Yeah.
to get down to where he could forecast the future by getting it so simple that it was like, I know this is what but he excluded everything. And when she explained that to me, that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then she said, "Okay, so let's say you did the things that you say let's just play it out. You did all the things that you said would have stopped this. How do you know it wouldn't have made it worse?" And I said, "How could it be worse?" And she goes, "Oh, Andy, let's talk about it." And she listed out, he could have killed himself sooner. He could have killed himself and taken other people with him. He could have gone in and not killed himself, but just shot someplace up in anger. Like he could have done. And I was like, "Hey, stop. Whoa, those are," she goes, "Well, what if he had attempted suicide and he had become a paraplegic? Now, what if,"
Yeah.
like she started listening, and she goes, "And what if it had all happened because you were able to change something?" And I thought, wow, so she said, "Andy, be very careful that when you're dealing with your grief, you don't spend time thinking about what else you could have done, because ultimately the only choice that matters is what he could have done different." And I would just say that to anyone who's lost somebody to suicide, there's probably not a damn thing. I apologize. There's probably not a thing you could do. And if you did something different, you just don't know if it wouldn't have made it worse, or that it would have been, or that a different outcome would have happened and it would have been no better. You don't know. So don't spend your time ruminating on what you could have done different. You did what you thought was best at the moment with the information you had, and that's all that can be expected.
That is the most important information you can give to anyone who has lost someone. And you are so right. 4 years is but a blink of the eye. When we lose someone, we get on the grief train, and we're there for the rest of our lives. We sometimes go from car to car and we help others who come on after us. And sometimes we step off for a bit, but ultimately we must return to the train because it's part of us forever.
Yep. Never goes away. Never goes away. That my only hope is that I have continued to live long enough that my other experiences in life have grown my whole experience. So that thing that never gets, people say, "Oh, your grief will get less, the pain will get," no, it won't. No, it won't.
No.
It's just, but you do have to work to expand your experiences so that grief is a smaller percentage of the whole, but it never gets smaller. It just, they're like, time heals all wounds. No,
it
no,
doesn't.
time does not. No, it doesn't. I don't know. I don't know who came up with that, but it was probably like a quick cliche to get somebody to be quiet, but it's not true.
Yeah, that is definitely not true. I think when we actively try to surround ourselves with happiness and the happiness of others around us, we're patting ourselves to make the grief more palatable. It doesn't change it at all. It's how we handle it that changes.
Yes. Yeah. Because
And
those are deep bruises, and you need a little padding around those deep
oh yeah,
bruises.
oh yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's a beautiful place for us to end. And I just, my heart goes out to you and your wife and your other children and to Heston, because those 9 years had to be tough on him too.
They were brutal for him. I know that much. There was, yes, it was.
Yeah.
I thank you so much for today. I really do. I just thank you so much for it.
Thank you. I thank you very much for trusting me with your story and with Heston. And anytime you want to share more memories with us, we're absolutely open to that, because I firmly believe that we have to keep saying their names. We have to be sure that we take the stories and the memories ahead with us so that those around us can remember them as well.
Thank you.
Oh,
Very true.
thank you, Andy, so much for coming on the show. I'm Elaine Lindsay. This is Suicide Zen Forgiveness. You'll get all the information you need about Andy down below, along with the show notes. And as usual, we will see you next time. And in the meantime, make the very best of your today, every day. Bye for now.
Thank you for being here for another inspiring episode of Suicide Zen Forgiveness. We appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe and download on your favorite service and check out SZF's YouTube channel or Facebook community. If you have the chance to leave a 5-star rating or review, it'd be greatly appreciated. Please refer this to a friend you know who may benefit from the hope and inspiration from our guests. Suicide Zen Forgiveness was brought to you by the following sponsors: Truel Social Media, the digital integration specialists. Let them get you rockin' page 1 in the search results. Canada's keynote humorist Judy Croon, motivational speaker, comedian, author, and stand-up coach at Second City. Judy has been involved for over a decade in the City Street Outreach Program in Toronto.
The ultimate podcasting pack. This is great for you if you're just starting your podcast or if you've been running it for a while. It's filled with tools, templates, and trainings for starting, growing, and monetizing your podcast. Get access to time-saving systems and strategies for accelerating your process at each step. Find new connections and collaborations in the uplifting podcasting community. I look forward to seeing you there.
Do you have a story to share? Do you know someone you think would be a great guest? Please go to szf42.com. And for our American listeners, that's szf42.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again.